You're about to listen to this conversation of the Care Conversations podcast. In today's episode, we interview Nigel Denny, the CEO of Ashberry Care Homes. We discuss how the Ashberry leadership team are growing their business by acquiring more care homes, and we also discuss the power of marketing to increase occupancy rates in the homes they've already got. This is well worth a listen to any care home group to understand and see a different point of view when it comes to growing your care home business. Nigel, what made you want to buy out and own your own care home group?
For me, it was really a bit of a natural progression, Brendan. I'd been in the industry for nearly 30 years, really from the very birth of the corporate care home industry, and had watched it been involved in its evolution. And over the years worked in many segments of the sector. So when I saw there was an opportunity, the time was right in my life to do it. There was little risk in terms of damaging my career by that point. And I saw the opportunity for what I thought was commercially made huge sense.
Perfect. And where is Ashberry Healthcare in your growth journey right now, would you say?
Yeah, that's an interesting one, because obviously we spent many years turning around and sorting out what, let's face it, was a failing business back in the days when Gary and I first got involved. And during the period of the last 5 years, we've disposed of the bad assets, the failing assets. Part of that disposal went to fund what we're doing now. We turned around those homes that were doing badly, not so much commercially, but that were doing really badly on quality and reputation and so on. And we're in a good position. And as you know, we've now started going the other way. We made our first new acquisition earlier this year. We've got another one geared up for this autumn, which will take us to somewhere north of 300 beds. The ultimate aim for us over the next 2 to 4 years is to get to around about 1,000 beds or 20 homes, that sort of size. Neither of those numbers are set in stone.
When coming up with creating a vision for Ashberry and like the growth plans, like how do you pick these kind of numbers and these areas? You've just suggested them. Is there any kind of, is it aspirational or is it actually logical based on what you've already got?
It's partly aspirational, but it's based on some form of logic. At some point, myself and my co-investors will reach a point actually where we want to exit the business, and it's important at that time that we have something that is really stable and tangible to pass on to the next management team, but also something that gives us the opportunity to maximise our own returns as well.
Yeah, absolutely. What's going to stop you from getting there?
Well, the trouble with this business is it can be slightly unpredictable. None of us saw the COVID pandemic coming, and that stopped a lot of people in this industry in their tracks. In fact, a lot of people closed down as a result of it. Let's pray that we don't get another one of those. Supply and demand is a problem in our business. I mean, there is an undersupply of care homes for the resident demand, and there are always a lot come on the market. But they tend to be either reasonably large groups that would be outside our ability at the moment to purchase, or one-off mum and pop type operation, which tends to be what we look at. But we have very specific criteria in terms of size, location, and style. So it's a question of just keeping really on top of that feed through the various brokers and agents in the sector.
Very good. Ashberry is kind of concentrated around Herefordshire, Wales and areas like that, quite close proximity. Is there Is that part of the kind of decisions when buying a home, or would you look to expand into other locations?
Well, if you look at our current geographical locations, it looks like somebody's got a map of the UK and thrown mud at it, and where it's that's where they stuck. That's where they bought the homes. And it's sort of by chance, really, that we've developed around the Hereford and Wales area. But that it makes sense for us to keep a geography that's tight enough to be able to manage. Of course, we've got extremes up in Cheshire and down in Surrey, so we can fill in the bits in between. Sure. We don't have particular aspirations to develop in the southeast or East Anglia, and certainly no further north than Cheshire. But I would say the West Midlands are our immediate sort of target, and will then sort of spill over probably to the East Midlands.
Is that due to things like economies of scale in terms of closer proximities allows you to share certain assets, for instance?
Yeah, I mean, it's always difficult to share staff between care homes, but one of the factors of this industry, because it's so heavily regulated, we need to be on the ball the whole time with ensuring that our homes are compliant, and they all need support in different ways. Doesn't make sense to move your management team 300 or 400 miles in a day to go and visit a home. So there's obviously economies of keeping the geography tight.
There are many challenges for the care industry. What would you say is the biggest challenge right now?
Well, as you rightly say, there's many. I don't necessarily put these in priority order, but one of the big problems is recruitment of staff. It is hard to attract young people into this industry as carers. There is a national shortage of nurses. That situation may get even worse. It certainly got a lot worse when we came out of the EU and a lot of the European nurses disappeared. So recruitment is always a problem. There are political problems with this business in that social care has always been rather the Cinderella service, and funding has not really been adequately forthcoming from successive governments. The NHS always get first dibs on money that is ostensibly earmarked for health and social care. So it is a real problem seeing where funding will come from for those people that don't have private means. And I suppose the third challenge to another degree is regulation. We've over the last 25 years we've gone from actually pretty much no regulation to being so over-regulated that the regulators don't really know what they're doing anymore, and the system is broken. Potentially that can be a challenge that you have to adapt to. It isn't a challenge to stop you expanding, but you certainly have to be aware of it.
Absolutely. Let's break each of those kind of areas down. Talked about recruitment. So I actually spoke with Manjaz, leader of Leader Care, the managing director there. He said exactly the same thing about young people coming into care. There's a problem there. How can we fix that?
That's a very good question, and if you can come up with the answer yourself, I'd be obliged. Look, we always get young people coming in. Some of them will stay. Some of them have a sort of natural calling or aptitude to be in the business, and some learn that. Others don't. For some, it is just clearly not the right thing for them to be doing. But if we can get young people coming through the doors prepared to give it a go on a trial basis or a volunteer basis, that's really good news. But it then remains for us to make sure that we treat them properly when they do join us, by giving them really good, attentive training, mentorship and leadership, but also empathy, because they're going to experience some things that all of our carers have been through at some point in time, but first time around, it just isn't easy. And the other thing, of course, is once you've got them, look after them, as we do with all of our staff. And we're fortunate. We have a really, really good staff retention record in this company. We've got a huge amount of very long serving staff. We've got managers actually that started with us as carers, which is a really good advertisement for us. So, look after them once you've got them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was struck. I've obviously visited a number of the Ashberry care homes now, and struck by the personal stories. Each person has their own individual care story. It's great, and they all tend to kind of lead from a natural progression of I had to look after a parent, a grandparent, and so on.
Yeah.
Came in, almost started as a carer and worked their way up. A lot of your managers have been on similar kind of routes. What do you think that one attribute people need to work in care?
I think there's more than one. I mean, they've got to have empathy for the residents that they're looking after. They've got to be caring by nature. They've got to be compassionate. If you don't have those things, it's always going to be quite difficult. If you're wanting to join the care industry as a carer because you want to get rich quickly, it's not going to happen.
Yeah,
unfortunately.
Yeah, absolutely. And as in a previous episode, I spoke to Debbie Harris of Autumna, and she was talking about the issues and the troubles at the CQC, where Streeting was quite strong about that. How does kind of news stories like that affect Ashberry, or does it have any impact?
Well, I think the news stories don't have the impact. What has the impact is our experiences with CQC. Whilst I want to be careful what I say, I mean we've had some huge difficulties battling a system that has been broken to the point actually that we've got a very serious issue that we have with CQC. CQC don't have the issue with us. We have it with CQC at the moment, and we're trying to currently establish what our course of action is going to be, what's open to us. But you're dealing with a big faceless organisation.
I suppose that leads into perception of the care industry, of care homes in particular. What would you say to families about care?
I think the public perception has changed a lot over the last 10 years, and the sector didn't have a great reputation, let's face it, and in many cases quite rightly so. I think the family's perception has changed, or people's perception has changed a lot, even over the last 2 or 3 years, where care homes, the care sector has a much higher presence on the internet, on social media. In many ways, COVID was quite good for our sector because I think we came out of it quite well, people having an understanding of what we do and what we did during that process. But if a family is considering a care home as an option for one of their loved ones, they need to look at all of the options, which can include having them living with you, using domiciliary care services, using respite services. But at the end of the day, if that all becomes too much, then a care home or a nursing home may remain the best option. But what I would say to them, or anybody that's thinking about it, is do your homework well. Go and visit a few care homes. If there's one you particularly like, visit several times, not always advising them first that you're going. Remember that the highest price is not necessarily the highest quality. There's some basic choices as to whether you want a home that is a home from home type environment, or whether you want a hotel type environment. Do your research, and I'd say to anybody, make sure you have a look at the Ashberry Healthcare facility in your area.
Very good. And So that's the family's side of it, the viewpoint there. But in terms of just in general, what can care homes do to break those perceptions of care?
Um, well, I suppose all they can do initially is ensure that they operate to extremely high standards and welcome people in to see what they're doing. But as you know, we as a company have really recognised the importance of good marketing to support the sales process. We do a huge amount of things now to market our business that we weren't doing 3 years ago. And it gives us, I think, a far wider exposure than we've ever had. But importantly, it's recognizing who your customer is as well, because actually the resident that ends up in the home quite often is not the customer. The customer can be family members, it can be healthcare professionals, it can be the NHS, it can be other business professionals, it can be a local authority. So making sure that our profile is and the profile of our industry is properly presented to those people is crucial. And of course, I think social media particularly is perhaps introducing our industry far more to younger people than it has done previously.
Yeah, absolutely. It's we often talk about the benefits of video content for getting families and residents into care, but I think that at the same time has a dual purpose. It can actually do your career branding, your employer branding as well. So getting videos of your staff day to day, showing people what care is like, is really important. And I think we've spoken about the attracting people into the care homes to have a look in the care homes. How important is customer experience? That initial first visit to a care home, and then obviously the transition into care. How important is care, customer experience?
Well, customer experience is crucial, and I, like most of my colleagues, have visited more care homes than I care to remember over time, and the customer experience can be very, very varied. Not just the environmental experience, but the sales experience as well. The classic boo-boo being you visit a care home and you've left and no one's asked you your name, your details, your contact details, and so on. But there's some very easy things to spot when you go in a care home, certain things that should not happen. Firstly, no care home these days should have any unpleasant odours whatsoever. Secondly, if you're walking around sticking to the floor, there's a problem. And thirdly, just look at the residents around you. Do they look well kept? Are they well dressed? Have they got their hair nicely dressed? And are they being stimulated by an activities program and so on? Very easy to spot the good from the bad by doing that.
Interesting. You mentioned at the start of the journey in care, especially around Ashberry, you had to do a lot of work to turn or transform things, improve failing services potentially. What would you say to other care homes potentially in that same situation? What are the kind of key aspects they can first work on to improve?
Well, if you haven't got your quality right, you're sunk anyway. If you haven't got your care right, you're sunk. So forget all the financial stuff. If you're not delivering what the customer needs, you've had it. You have got to be mindful of the finances and ensure that your expenditure is more than met by your income. That's very difficult in homes that are wholly reliant on local authority funding, because there's not going to be much spare funds to do anything. Make sure you've got a really good activities program, keeping your residents stimulated, mentally healthy as well as physically healthy, and provide really good food, because for most residents that's the highlight of the day.
When it comes to staff retention, how does Ashberry work to retain staff?
Okay, so Look, a lot of it is based on the culture that we've created over time. And we as a management team have worked really hard to introduce our philosophy, which is we want this to feel like a family business, but a family business that is underpinned by really good corporate systems, policies, and procedures. And I think we achieve that by making sure that all of our staff know who the senior management of the team of the business are, who the owners are. We all visit the homes very regularly and we all talk to the staff. And we also take a great deal of care to engender our core values in the business. Our core values being loyalty, integrity, and compassion. Now, those aren't just words. We sort of measure up against those. There's a lot of things we have going on. So all of our staff have the opportunity to earn extra bonuses during the month, the week, and so on, by helping out when we're short and when things are needed. But we also recognise the things they do outside the scope of their normal work. So we have an employee of the month at every home. We have a big awards ceremony every year for each home where we reward loyalty with awards for long service and so on. We also reward high attendance. Those people that have 100% attendance during the year get additional benefits, and going the extra mile. That's sort of the integrity part of the equation.
Yeah. Amazing. It's for care home owners that maybe haven't been on that journey and kind of clearly set out their vision in terms of their core values. How important do you think that actually is?
I think it's been absolutely essential to our business. I think it's actually made us in many ways in terms of it was all very, very core and crucial to our whole turnaround program that has gone on for, essentially for several years, and they're the values that we'll take forward.
And on a practical basis, obviously, your role as the chief executive of Ashberry, on one hand, it's care, it's a care industry, it's care homes, it's caring for people. On the other hand, you're running a business, you're employing a lot of people. You've obviously got to pay them, make sure they're paid and they earn their money. How hard is it to make decisions based on those two seemingly competing kind of aspects?
Well, it's easier than it used to be. In the early days, we were struggling as to how we were going to make payroll and who was going to get paid each month. But fortunately, now we're in a position where, we're financially very sound and poised for expansion, and our cash flow is taken care of. So those decisions become really much easier. And in a sense, I suppose I've delegated them more recently, as we got a great team of senior people in the company who look after, by and large, the day-to-day operations, and I'm tending to concentrate far more on finding new acquisitions and raising funds and dealing with banks and so on. But I try and keep my finger very much on the pulse and still do regular visits to the homes and talk to the managers directly on a regular basis.
And on a personal level, have you enjoyed the journey?
Yeah, it's been a bit of a roller coaster.
I can imagine.
There are times when I haven't enjoyed it at all, but stuck with it. But like any journey, it was not a smooth path. But we're getting near to the destination.
Perfect. And I'm also conscious that we've talked a lot about challenges that you've faced. Are there any opportunities that are upcoming in the care industry that you can talk about?
By opportunities, do you mean opportunities for new sectors to develop?
Or just anything in general for the care industry, looking at the landscape, what's the biggest opportunity?
Well, I think the biggest opportunity remains where we as a country go with dementia care, which as people are living longer is becoming more and more of a problem. And as you know, we do in some of our homes really specialise in dementia care and dementia nursing. And I think that's going to be a segment of the social care that is just going to continue to grow. I'm not quite sure what the long-term answer to it is, but I would like to think that in the UK at some point somebody will start developing dementia care villages on the Dutch model, which is an absolutely fantastic model of dementia care. Probably not the time to go into a huge amount of detail on it, but that's got to be the way forward. The model's now being copied sort of under license, more or less, and operators from all over the world visit the Dutch dementia villages very regularly, and have now opened up in Australia and other countries. Problem is, you need land and you need money to develop them.
If you can pick one single highlight, what would it be from your journey at Ashberry?
Completing the management buyout. That was a huge highlight, because it was the day actually that we knew we'd secured the future of the company. It was a long path to get to that point, a rocky path, and very uncertain, almost till the last day. But yeah, that was a huge achievement.
Obviously, you've had to be resilient in your growth journey at the start with Ashberry. Just for our audience, what are some of the key takeaways you can give when trying to improve a failing care home, both in respect to marketing, i.e. filling beds, and also about the staff and retaining staff?
Okay, I think the first thing is to be honest with yourself as to what the failings of the care home are and why there are failings. So it's going to fail for two reasons only, really. One, that the quality is poor, which then engenders a poor reputation and people don't want to go there. Or secondly, that it's financially underperforming. Now, it may be financially underperforming because the quality and therefore the occupancy is bad, or it may be underperforming because they haven't got the staffing structure right, and so on. The commercial elements in terms of getting the financial controls in are the easy bit to fix and doesn't really require any further explanation. But where you have a problem is if people aren't knocking on your door to buy your beds. So where do you start? Well, you're going to start with your regulatory inspections and find out what the inspectors are saying, and are there fundamental problems with the care. If there are, it's likely that you've got a leadership problem. Now, that may be a leadership at management level, it may be a leadership sort of further down at the care delivery level. You have to sort that out. You have to make sure that everybody knows what your standards are. And there's ways that we do that. So usually if we were acquiring a new home, or we have a home underperforming, to our standards even, we will bring in staff from another home, buddy them up, mentor them, say, look, this is what you're doing at the moment, this is how you could be doing it, this is how you should be doing it, and so on. The other thing, when taking over an underperforming home, it is likely that they may not have very good systems. We still look at care homes that have totally analog systems for everything, which is actually becoming pretty archaic, although the NHS still use analog systems in their hospitals to a large degree. But actually you can't run this business that way. You need everything digital. You have to have proper systems, and you have to get the staff on board with that, because there's always a lot of pushback. So that again becomes a training issue and a reward issue for passing the various stages. Only really when you know you've got your quality right can you go to the outside world and start talking to them. So you can then start doing open evenings, bring people into the home, either from potential referring groups like local professionals, solicitors, estate agents, all those sorts of people. But actually, first and foremost, you want your care professionals involved. And the best way to do that is put an event on in the evening with a guest speaker, so that they can get their CPD points, which they have to do for additional training every year. Give them something to eat and drink, show them around the home, tell them what you're about. You've got to believe in your product, and you've got to be seen there. Shortly after we completed the MBO and had a lot more flexibility to control the destiny of the company, myself and my co-director, investor, took the decision that actually we really needed to have some professional marketing in the company, not just to promote our image, but also to enable us to approach our sales process with a good backing to feed the sales. So we appointed a sales manager, Claire, who then became our sales and marketing manager, and now has a far more bigger, important job title than that. But Claire was actually very adamant that we needed to invest significantly in our marketing to feed our sales. And it was at a time when we were struggling with occupancy in one or two homes. And she, after a process, recommended Your Good Selves as a potential partner. And as you know, we had some meetings, and I have to say we've been delighted. It's worked extremely well. You've taken approaches to our business that we never would have dreamed of. We're getting a nice shiny new website. We're now using drone filming and manager interviewing and all sorts of things that really promote each of our homes individually as well as the company. So it's been a very successful partnership, and one I hope we can continue.
Part of these podcasts is obviously for our audience, but also it's for us to learn from as well. And the insights you've shared today are amazing. So thank you very much for your time and for answering all of these questions.
Thank you, Brendan. It's been a pleasure.
Cheers.